You're 22, standing in a gymnasium in March, phone in hand, refreshing a webpage at exactly 11 a.m. Eastern, because in 9 seconds an envelope you can't see yet will decide where you spend the next 7 years of your life. The page loads. Neurosurgery. University Hospital, Midwest. You don't remember screaming. Your roommate tells you later that you did. 14 years after that gymnasium, you scrub in on a Tuesday morning, remove a tumor wrapped around a brainstem that 3 other surgeons wouldn't touch, and a resident half your age hands you a phone afterward with 40 missed calls, because the family has been in the waiting room for 6 hours and nobody else will tell them anything until you do. This is every rank of becoming a neurosurgeon, and what it actually costs to reach the top of it. Level 1. The medical student. You're 23. You've already spent 4 years as an undergrad maintaining a GPA that couldn't dip below a 3.9 without closing doors permanently, and now you owe roughly $260,000 in medical school debt before you've treated a single patient. You study 80 hours a week for an exam called Step 1, which used to be scored numerically and now, since a 2022 policy change, is simply pass or fail, which sounds like relief until you realize it just moved the entire pressure onto Step 2 instead. Do you know yet that neurosurgery residency positions are among the 7 most competitive of any specialty in medicine? You will. You spend your 4th year doing away rotations, visiting hospitals you might spend the next decade of your life inside, performing for attendings who will decide your future based on how you hold a retractor for 6 hours without complaining. Match day arrives. You open the envelope. Neurosurgery. Your parents throw a party that night. You don't tell them yet that the average medical school graduate carries a median debt around $200,000 to $260,000, and that neurosurgery residents rank among the most indebted physicians in the country, with more than 65% of graduates in the specialty carrying over $187,500 in loans before residency even starts. Tonight isn't the night for that number. Tonight is just the envelope. Level 2. The intern. PGY1. You're 27. Your salary is $68,000 a year, which sounds like money until you divide it by the 80-hour weeks the Accreditation Council for Graduate Medical Education technically caps you at, and which everyone on your service quietly exceeds anyway. That comes out to roughly $16 an hour, less than what the barista who makes your 4 a.m. coffee earns. A researcher named Christopher Landrigan, at Harvard's Brigham and Women's Hospital, published findings showing that residents working extended shifts made significantly more serious medical errors than residents on restricted schedules. You read the study during a 28-hour shift. You laugh, because there's nothing else to do with that information at 3 a.m. with 4 more patients to round on. You cry in a stairwell exactly once this year. You tell no one. You find out later that every single resident on your floor has their own stairwell. You learn to read a head CT at 3 a.m. faster than the overnight radiologist, because the patient in front of you can't wait for the official read. You learn the specific silence that falls over a trauma bay in the 4 seconds before someone decides whether to call it or keep going. Level 3. The junior resident. You're 30. You've survived the intern year, which exists specifically to see who survives it. You're now doing real cases, not just holding instruments, and your hands have stopped shaking during a craniotomy the way they did 18 months ago. A patient dies on your service for the first time under circumstances that weren't your fault and still feel like they were. You learn what surgeons call M&M, the weekly morbidity and mortality conference where every complication gets presented to the entire department, your name attached to the slide. You stand at a podium and explain, in front of 40 attendings, exactly what happened and what you would do differently. Nobody comforts you afterward. That's not what the conference is for. The comfort, if it comes later, quietly, from another resident who's been through it. Your salary this year is $71,000. Your med school loans, deferred through residency, have grown by roughly $30,000 in accrued interest you haven't touched yet. You get engaged this year, in a hospital cafeteria, because it's the only place you and your partner reliably overlap for more than 9 minutes. Nobody around you looks up from their trays. Nobody in this building is surprised by anything anymore. Level 4. The chief resident. You're 33. 7 years into a residency, most specialties finish in 3, you now run the service. You decide who operates on what, you supervise the interns who remind you painfully of yourself, and you take the 2 a.m. call yourself instead of passing it down, because the chief is supposed to be the last line before the attending gets woken up. A researcher at Mayo Clinic named Tate Scharnefelt spent years studying physician burnout and found that surgical specialties, neurosurgery among the highest, showed some of the steepest rates of emotional exhaustion in all of medicine. You don't need the paper to tell you that. You've watched 2 people from your original intern class leave the field entirely, one for anesthesiology, one for a non-clinical consulting job that pays less and, by his own account, feels like breathing again. You start your own tally, silently, of how many weddings you've missed. You lose count somewhere past 6. The opportunity cost compounds in ways you didn't expect. A friend from undergrad who went into family medicine finished residency in 3 years and has been earning a full attending salary for 4 years by the time you're still running someone else's service at 2 a.m. The math eventually favors you. It just doesn't favor you yet, and yet is where you're living. Level 5. The fellow. You're 35. You finished the 7-year residency, and instead of finally practicing independently, you sign up for 1 more year, a fellowship in a subspecialty, complex spine or vascular or pediatric neurosurgery, because the general training alone isn't enough anymore to compete for the jobs you actually want. Your salary during fellowship barely moves, still under 6 figures, while attendings in specialties with 3-year residencies have been earning full salary for 4 years already. You do the math on the opportunity cost once, at 2 a.m., and immediately regret doing the math. But something shifts this year. You run a case almost entirely on your own for the first time, an attending scrubbed in only as a formality, standing back, letting your hands do it. He doesn't say much afterward. He just starts introducing you to patients differently. This is Dr. ____. She'll be doing your surgery. Not assisting. Doing it. You call your mother that night. She asks how the surgery went. You realize, mid-sentence, that you've stopped translating the medical terms into plain English for her. She's been listening to you talk about brains and vessels and margins for so many years that she just understands now. That's its own kind of milestone nobody puts on a CV. Level 6. The attending. You're 37. 14 years after that gymnasium, you sign your first real contract. Base compensation for a new neurosurgeon commonly lands between $550,000 and $800,000 depending on the market, and for the first time in your adult life, a number on a page actually matches what the job has cost you to reach it. You start paying down $310,000 in student debt aggressively, and if you live below your means the way your residency director advised you to, you can be debt-free within 3 to 7 years. Most of your colleagues don't live below their means. Lifestyle creeps up to swallow the raise before the ink dries, the same way it did for the trader and the mechanic before you, on a different ladder, same math. You take your first real vacation in 11 years. You don't know what to do with 6 unscheduled days. You end up reading a journal article by the pool, and your spouse doesn't say anything about it, because they stopped expecting anything different years ago. Malpractice insurance for your specialty runs into 6 figures annually in some states, a cost most patients never think about and most surgeons never stop thinking about. You start reading your contract's tail coverage clause more carefully than you ever read a research paper in medical school. Level 7. The name. You're 44. You've built a subspecialty practice in complex cranial cases other surgeons in your city won't attempt. Total compensation for a surgeon at your level in a competitive referral market can clear $1 to $2 million in a strong year, and patients now fly in from other states specifically to be on your table, not just any surgeons. Here is the twist. Here is what nobody told you in that gymnasium. The 7-year residency doesn't soften once you're on the other side of it. Most neurosurgeons in their 50s still work hours that would technically violate the duty hour restrictions residents are protected by. There is no ceiling here that stops asking for more of you. There's only a bigger number attached to the asking. Some surgeons in your position start chasing pure cranial work over spine cases, not because it pays better, but because orthopedic spine surgeons have moved into the routine spine procedures that used to fund neurosurgery practices, pushing your specialty toward the rarer, harder pathology where competition thins out and the stakes rise even higher. The tumor case on that Tuesday morning, the one wrapped around the brainstem, takes 11 hours. You come out of the OR at 7 p.m. having eaten nothing since 5 a.m. The family stands up when they see you, and you tell them the thing every surgeon dreads not being able to say and finally get to say, it's out, clean margins, she's going to wake up. The mother hugs you. You still have your surgical cap on. You realize, standing there, that this exact moment, not the salary, not the title, not the referral network, is the only part of the entire 14-year ladder that ever felt like the reason you climbed it. You walk to the call room to sleep for 4 hours before the next case. Somewhere in the hospital, a third-year medical student is pulling an all-nighter for step 2, refreshing a forum instead of a webpage this time, wondering if any of it will be worth what it costs. You could tell her. You don't. Some things on this ladder, you only understand by climbing them yourself.